The Battle of Kos was a brief battle between British, Italian and German forces for the control of the Greek island of Kos, in the then Italian-held Dodecanese Islands in the Aegean Sea. Background: with the capitulation of Italy in September 1943, German forces in the Balkans and the Mediterranean moved to take over the Italian-held areas. At the same time, the Allies, under the instigation of British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, endeavoured to occupy the Dodecanese island chain. The Dodecanese Islands, under Italian control since 1912, were strategically located in the southeastern Aegean Sea, and Churchill hoped to use them as a base against German positions in the Balkans, and as a means to pressure neutral Turkey into the war on the Allied side. British landings. The main prize, the island of Rhodes, fell to a swift attack by a German armoured brigade. Nevertheless, British forces landed on several islands, most notably Kos and Leros, and together with the Italian forces located there, there were hopes of eventually regaining Rhodes. On 13 September 1943, 38 liberators from North Africa bombed the 3 airfields on the island of Rhodes, effectively grounding the German Air Force aircraft, while SBS units landed on Kos, occupying the port and the airfield near the village of Antimakia. On 14 September, 2 Beaufighters and a number of Spitfires from 7th Squadron South flew onto the airfield. On the night of 14–15 September, 120 paratroopers from 11th Parachute Battalion were dropped by Dakotas of No. 216 Squadron RAF on the island. The paratroopers were welcomed by the Italian garrison, who laid straw on the landing zone. At first light on 15 September, a standing patrol of 2 Spitfires of No. 7 SAF Squadron was maintained over Kos to give cover to the transport aircraft and ships bringing stores and reinforcements. Among these were the first troops of the Raf Regiment, who flew from the British Mandate of Palestine with 9 Hispano-Suiza HS 404 guns for anti-aircraft defense, followed 2 days later by a second detachment, which brought up to strength one of the first of the regiment's squadrons to be transported to the battlefield by air with all its weapons. On the ground, the Allied force consisted of the 1st Battalion, Durham Light Infantry, 11th Parachute Division, a company of men from the Special Boat Service and Royal Air Force personnel under the command of Lt. Col. LRF. Kenyon. The force totaled California, 1,600 British and about 3,500 Italian servicemen from the original garrison. German aerial bombardment. The German counterattack began on 17 September with heavy air bombardment. The Messerschmitt 109s and Junkers 88s involved met at first with varying success. For the RAF gunners on the ground and the South African Spitfires in the air gave a good account of themselves. Butterfly bombs, however, made Antimakia temporarily unserviceable and damaged the transport Dakotas. But the first detachments of the Durham Light Infantry were landed, although one Dakota came down in the sea and its occupants were rescued but interned in Turkey. German bombing and cannon fire attacks continued to harass the garrison over the next few days. The Luftwaffe flew 100 aircraft into the Aegean area, bringing their strength up to 360 aircraft. While the German air cover improved, the Allies could only rely on a limited number of aircraft due to decisions made by General Eisenhower concerning the British involvement in the Balkan theatre. The 3 commanders-in-chief, Middle East, were responsible for the Aegean operation, but the disposition of forces was decided upon by Eisenhower. As Middle East Command was part of the Greater Mediterranean Theatre, Eisenhower ruled that in no circumstances was the Dodecanese campaign to be allowed to influence, however slightly, the conduct of other campaigns in the Mediterranean. This meant that Middle East Command could not look for permanent help from the Italian war theatre, but must be prepared to improvise when temporary naval and air forces could be spared. Eisenhower's decision, in which he had the loyal backing of his deputy, Air Chief Marshal Sir Arthur Tedder, was a corollary of the beliefs of the United States Chiefs of Staff that the Dodecanese operation typified British diversionary strategy which might well lead to some form of Balkan adventure. The limited aircraft cover for the operation on Kos was completely inadequate and would have a serious effect on the British ability to defend the island. Over the weeks from the 13th of September to the 3rd of October, the Allied aircraft defending Kos suffered many losses from bombardment of the airfield and in air combat. By the 26th of September, the No. 7th Squadron staff was reduced to 4 serviceable aircraft. Number 74 Squadron RAF was flown onto Kos on this day. The defenders' position on Kos, never enviable, soon became serious and, presently, desperate. For the Italian anti-aircraft defense was negligible and their own resources meager. To add to their troubles, the area around the airfield they had to protect was too rocky to permit digging in, and there was no time to build blast walls before the enemy was upon them. The air attacks were so severe that casualties inflicted on the British paratroopers forced him to be withdrawn on the 25th of September. German landings, Operation Polar Bear. On the 1st of October 1943, a concentration of shipping was observed in the ports of Crete, and early on the following morning a convoy steaming in a north-northeasterly direction southeast of Melos was sighted by British aircraft. Urgent supplies were landed on Kos by 5 Dakotas, and during their unloading the news came that a small German invasion fleet of 10 vessels was at sea. This flotilla carried a task force composed of a battle group from the 22nd Infantry Division in Crete, as well as Brandenburg special forces from the mainland, namely the 1st Amphibious Battalion and the 5th Paratrooper Battalion. Part of the entire regiment of Brandenburgers assigned to the attack, all under the command of Lt. Gen. Friedrich Wilhelm Müller. At 4:30 hours on the 3rd of October the invasion of Kos began. By midday, 1,200 Germans, well armed with light artillery and armored cars, were ashore and in action. Dive bombing by Junker 87s added to the difficulties of the defense, and in the afternoon Antimachia was overrun. The main German convoy, which had been attacked from air, was estimated to have consisted of 7 transports, 7 landing craft, 3 destroyers and numerous kayaks and other small craft. The principal landings took place at Marmaris and Tingachi and at Kamer Bay, with subsidiary landings at Fabisi and Capo Foco. Paratroops were dropped west and south of Antimachia. By 12:00 hours the Germans were reported as having landed 1,500 men. At about 13:30 hours a further small German paratroop landing of a company from the Brandenburg Division was made in the center of the island, and more troops arrived by sea. For the British forces, the situation was reported as confused, but by 18:00 it was further reported as critical. The Durham Light Infantry, SBS and paratroopers fought gallantly, but in the face of superior numbers and heavier equipment were forced to withdraw to positions covering the town and port of Kos and the airfield. That evening the Germans attacked the British positions in strength, reducing the British position to a small area around the town of Kos. The German strength had been reinforced to an estimated 4,000 men by the evening of the 3rd of October. The Italian and British forces had ceased organized resistance by 600 on the 4th of October. 1,388 British and 3,145 Italians were taken prisoners, while the captured Italian commander of the island, Col. Felice Leggio, and 90 of his officers were shot by the Germans. According to Hitler's the 11th of September order to execute captured Italian officers who had taken up arms against Germany, A German communiqué of 5 October reporting the cessation of hostilities on Kos gave the number of prisoners taken as 600 British and 2,500 Italians, with more Italians coming in. A number of the British force escaped to neighbouring islands and were rescued by the special boat service operating at night. Aftermath. The capture of Kos would have disastrous consequences for British operations in the Dodecanese Islands. Deprived of air cover, the Allies were in the long run unable to hold the other islands, while the Germans pressed their advantage, capturing Leros a month later and completing their conquest of the Dodecanese by the end of November. In the conclusion of the official dispatch covering these operations, it is remarked that, "We failed because we were unable to establish airfields in the area of operations. The enemy's command of the air enabled him so to limit the operations and impair the efficiency of land, sea and air forces that, by picking his time he could deploy his comparatively small forces with decisive results. Had more aircraft been available, especially modern long-range fighters, and given more luck, the operations might have been prolonged. But after the loss of Kos, if the enemy were prepared to divert the necessary effort, it is doubtful if Leros could have been held indefinitely without our embarking on a major operation for which no forces were available."